Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Look, we're just going to dive right in today. We are unpacking a really frustrating mystery. The exact biological reasons your teenager is, well, wide awake at 10 p.m. And spoiler alert, no, they're actually not just doing it to spite you. More importantly, we're going to explore a highly practical, scientifically grounded plan to organically shift your family's sleep schedule, all without giving up your boundaries. So if you've ever felt like you're fighting a completely losing battle every single night, you are absolutely in the right place.
We've all been there, right? It's 10 o'clock on a school night. You look at your teen and you just say, you need to sleep now. They turn off the light, sure, but they remain completely awake. By 10:30, they're tossing and turning, and by 11, they're totally frustrated looking right at you saying, I told you I wasn't tired. Now, as a parent, you naturally hear resistance, maybe even defiance, but your teenager is experiencing genuine wakefulness. Almost inevitably, this whole thing quickly devolves into a super stressful debate about obedience or responsibility, or maybe spending way too much time on their phone.
So you're left asking this completely exhausting question. Why won't they just go to sleep? Now, it's so easy to assume they just prefer staying up late and having an unhealthy schedule. But what if this frustrating bedtime battle isn't actually about defiance at all? What if it's not just a matter of phone obsession? What if, and stick with me here, this behavior is actually driven by a massive fundamental shift in their biology during adolescence? Because right beneath the surface, sleep is actually controlled by two interacting biological systems, and both of these undergo massive changes during puberty. First up, you have the circadian rhythm. Think of it like a master internal clock that organizes alertness across the day. Well, during adolescence, the timing of this internal clock naturally just shifts later. Second, you've got sleep pressure, or the homeostatic sleep drive. Normally, this pressure builds up the longer you're awake. But for teenagers, this pressure builds way more slowly in the evening, meaning they can stay alert significantly longer than they could as children before that sleep pressure finally gets heavy enough to actually make them feel tired.
But here is the absolute crucial point. Later sleepiness absolutely does not mean they need less sleep, okay? A teenager who is wide awake, totally mentally active at 9:30 p.m. still mathematically needs 8 to 10 hours of rest. Their biological clock has shifted, yeah, but their total sleep requirement hasn't dropped a single inch. Actually, this is the exact piece of information where things usually completely fall apart in the modern household.
Why? Because this delayed biological timing violently collides with what is basically an impossible schedule. I mean, think about it. If they literally can't fall asleep early, but that brutal early morning school bell requires them to wake up at 6:30 a.m., their available window for sleep becomes dangerously short. Throw in late transportation, sports practices, and homework that seemingly doesn't even start until after you've cleared the dinner dishes, and boom, we end up creating this terrible, vicious cycle. They're pounding caffeine to survive the morning, taking long naps after school, which by the way totally destroys their evening sleepiness, and then they sleep in massively on the weekends just to recover. It really looks like bad behavior, but it's actually biology, school timing, and behavior in a massive head-on collision.
And this is exactly why just commanding an earlier bedtime fails every single time. You literally cannot force a fully alert brain to sleep just by pointing sternly at the clock. Putting a wide-awake teenager in bed hours before their body is actually ready, that just creates clock watching, frustration, and honestly, desperate phone seeking. Instead, you've got to change the entire environmental system. We are talking about wake time, morning light, daytime activity, and evening routines. A bedtime simply can't successfully move earlier when literally every other signal in their life remains late. What's actually super fascinating here is how we can strategically use contrasting environments to literally reset that internal clock. See, light is an incredibly powerful timing signal. We want a bright, really active morning with strong signals, sunlight, breakfast, movement, to tell the brain, hey, the day has officially started. On the flip side, we need the evening to have dim lights and a really clear digital landing time. And just a quick aside, remember, it's not just the blue light from the screens keeping them awake. It's the interactive stimulation, the messaging, the gaming, those endless short-form videos. That is what keeps their minds racing.
Okay, so how do we actually do this? Let's get right into it. Introducing the 7-part teen sleep timing plan. Now, the goal here isn't to just give your teen an unlimited night, but to help their body clock, your family schedule, and their school demands actually move into a much healthier, functioning relationship. All right, step 1, anchor the wake time. You really need to keep those school day wake times reasonably consistent. But just as importantly, you have got to avoid those massive, extreme weekend shifts where practical. Look, I know, sleeping in until noon on a Saturday feels like catching up, but it dramatically delays their internal clock, which pretty much guarantees Sunday night is going to be a complete disaster.
Moving on to step 2, and this requires you to kind of become a scientist in your own home. You need to observe actual sleepiness. For 1 full week, I want you to ignore the clock on the wall. Instead, just notice when they naturally start yawning or losing focus, or even choosing to lie down without you ordering them to. You're trying to identify their true biological sleep window here, separating it from whatever arbitrary bedtime you might have chosen.
Step 3 is to move gradually. Once you figure out that actual biological sleep window, and let's face it, is probably much later than your target time, you have to shift the routine and lights out time in really small, manageable steps. We're talking like 15-minute increments here. Do not, whatever you do, make a sudden, frustrating 2-hour jump. Human biology simply cannot adapt that fast.
Let's look at step 4. You have to strengthen the morning. You need to send a really powerful, undeniable signal to their circadian system that the day has officially kicked off. Get some bright indoor light going, throw open the curtains, make sure they actually eat some breakfast, and get them moving. A predictable, active start to the day completely anchors the sleep-wake schedule and stops that internal clock from drifting later and later. Step 5 is basically the opposite. It's all about reducing evening delay signals. Dim the lights around the house, establish a firm digital landing time where open-ended gaming and group chats just stop, and if possible, move that super demanding, stressful homework earlier in the evening. Also, if they really aren't sleepy yet, keep them out of bed. It is so much better to let them read a book in dim light outside the bedroom so they don't start associating their actual bed with tossing, turning, and scrolling. Okay, step 6 is absolutely vital. Protect sleep pressure. Remember that homeostatic drive we talked about earlier? You've got to protect it by severely limiting late-day caffeine and dodging those huge afternoon naps. Taking a massive 2-hour nap at 4 p.m. literally drains all that vital sleep pressure they desperately need to actually feel tired by 10 p.m. And finally, step 7. Review the evidence. This right here is the payoff for all your hard work. After about 2 weeks, take a step back and look at the reality of the situation. Ask yourself, and your team for that matter, is falling asleep actually getting easier? Is the sleepiness hitting a bit earlier? Is waking up just slightly more manageable? Has their daytime functioning genuinely improved? To manage all these 7 steps, you can run what's called a 14-day circadian reset experiment. Over these 2 weeks, you just casually track variables like morning light exposure, afternoon naps, late-night gaming, and, most importantly, when actual sleep happens. But critically, do not use this as surveillance or punishment. You are looking for actual relationships. Does late gaming push their sleepiness later? Does a really bright morning make the next evening easier? Adjust one factor at the end of week 1, and then review the whole system on day 14. Now, throughout this whole reset, your communication is totally key. Using calm, biologically accurate language honestly changes everything. For instance, saying something like, "Look, your body clock may be running later, and you still need enough sleep." Doing this helps you maintain your household boundaries because teenagers still absolutely need limits on devices and caffeine, but you're doing it without treating their normal physiological changes as defiance. You can say, "We aren't going to solve this by arguing at 10 o'clock. We are going to change the whole schedule." Your authority is always so much stronger when it actually addresses the real biological mechanism rather than attacking their character. There is an important caveat here, though. We have to clearly distinguish between a normal teenage phase delay and a real medical condition. A later sleep preference? That is perfectly normal, and it will respond to the schedule adjustments we've just outlined. But if their sleep timing is extremely delayed, or if they repeatedly cannot wake up for school, if they're missing classes, or if this whole pattern persists despite building a realistic schedule, well, it might be delayed sleep-wake phase disorder. That is a condition that severely impairs functioning, and it requires professional healthcare assessment, not just stricter parenting. And please, don't just jump to melatonin or bright light therapies without a doctor's guidance for chronic issues. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, really important question. Are you going to keep fighting this fruitless, exhausting battle against your teenager's biology every single night? Or are you ready to implement a complete environmental system that actually supports their natural rhythm and builds a schedule they can actually survive and thrive in? Honestly, it is time to stop the 10 o'clock arguments and start resetting the signals. Thank you so much for joining me, and hey, good luck with the reset.